Hello. The first thing I would ask, I'm Kathy Goldman. I was wondering if you all could move down because we have a little handout. We want everybody to have one. And then we're going to do something that involves you using it. It's like college where the professor asks you to move down. Nobody wants to do it. I get it. So while you're doing that, we'll introduce ourselves.
So I'm Matt Eastwood. I'm the Global Chief Creative Officer of J. Walter Thompson worldwide. I'm an Australian living life as a New Yorker and been in New York about 10 years.
My name is Pippa Seichrist, and I'm the co-founder and co-director of Miami Ad School. Miami Ad School actually has 15 locations around the world, all called Miami Ad School. And so I spend a lot of time on planes, hopping around to visit all of them and develop new ways of training people.
And I'm Farrah Bostic. I run a product design, strategy, and market research company called The Difference Engine, and I'm based here in New York.
So we can get started. What we want to talk about today is where you can take your career and how you really turn being a creative person into a career and being a leader. So we're going to assume that all of you are completely brilliant at being creative people. You know, you're great writers, you're great art directors, whatever it is. But there comes a time where you want some more letters by your name. You know, you want to be a group creative director, you want to be an executive creative director, or who knows, you want to be the president, or you want to start your own company. How do you do that? Whoever tells you that? And not all of us are lucky enough to have a mentor or somebody who's going to tell us all of these things at once. So you have 4 of us here today who can tell you what we consider to be the top 10 things that you need to know and to need to be able to do to kind of push your career to that next level. The way it's going to work today is each one of us is going to talk about one thing that's on this list. We gave you this little handout. Every one of us will discuss one that's near and dear to our hearts. Then what we're going to do is ask you, now I work for Jack Morton, which is an experiential marketing company, so we believe in making things transformational, and that if the audience participates, then you have sort of a more valuable takeaway. So what we want you to do today is to leave here with a plan and to know what you're going to be able to do. So I don't believe in just kind of push communications. It's got to be kind of back and forth, and that's our goal here today. So what we'll do is, after we talk, you guys will break into groups. You'll kind of squish together, maybe about 10 people in a group or so. Pick one of these things that you do now that you're pretty good at. Share that with the other people in the group, and you can take some notes about what the person does, and then we'll take a few minutes so that you can pick 3 things that you're going to work on in the future and that you want to do, that you're going to be able to do. And then keep this for the rest of your life, and that you can always refer back to it, and it comes in really handy for your performance reviews. So the thing I'm going to talk about is the first point, which is to make your client a great client. And I'm going to tell you a little story about that. So I was, if you can imagine, if we didn't have mute buttons on our phones, our lives would be completely different. So I was with an account person in my office one day. We got a call from a client, and she was giving us an assignment on the phone. We had never met her before. And she worked for a very large company, and she wanted to do a trade show activations, had something happen to attract people to come into her booth. So she said to me, okay, so I want to do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And I mute the phone, I'm screaming at the account guy. I said, there is no way, I do not do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's completely cheesy. This is the dumbest client I've ever heard in my life. We should just fire her now. And I said, and I don't think that even has anything to do with her business. So he said to me, so tell her. I said, what? He said, well, how do you expect her to give you the right answer if you don't tell her what you want her to do? I said, well, that makes sense. So waited for her to stop talking, unmuted the phone, And I said, not I don't do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but I said, this is not going to be exactly right. She said, oh, so how do we get to the right answer? I said, well, we need a brief, this and that, all these different things. You have to answer all these questions for me. And then we get back and we'll talk about it and we'll kind of share. And she said, okay. And I thought, wow, she's meeting me halfway. That's pretty awesome. Needless to say, cut to the chase, we ended up doing this activation globally. It was incredibly successful, way beyond what they ever thought they would do. We had a multi-year relationship. It ended for other kinds of reasons. It had nothing to do with me, of course. And I also want to say that the other thing you need to do is when you have somebody doing what you want them to do, you need to be kind of gracious about it and thank them. So I can remember when I won my first award, I was pretty young, and I was completely flabbergasted that they called my name. And I got up on the stage, and all I could manage to say was thank you to the client, that they had totally made it possible. And then I realized it was probably a really good thing to do. And if you think about it, if you want your children to act a certain way, you model that kind of behavior. And that's how it works with clients too. They're never going to know what to do. They're never going to be a great client until you tell them how to do it, because they don't go to great client school. And that's how that works. And I am working on a much bigger project about this. If anybody has any great stories, I totally want to hear them. Matt?
So I thought I would talk about one of the topics, which is be a great leader. And I liked that phrase because it very much kind of resonated with me in terms of, we were talking earlier about, some people say either you're born a leader or do you become a leader. And I think some people are born a leader, that's true, but I think you can become a leader. And I think the thing that I've learned about leadership is it's not accidental. You don't just suddenly end up with a big job running a company or a department or whatever it might be, and suddenly you're a great leader. You have to continue to learn, to study, to read, to grow, to develop into the leader that you want to be. And I just wanted to tell two quick stories as they kind of relate to my own journey as a leader in advertising. I had made this decision when I was 27 years old that I wanted to be a executive creative director. I wanted to run an agency. And that was a pretty bold move at 27. I was much younger looking then. I was about 40 pounds lighter. I had no grey hair, and I looked like a kid. But I knew that that's what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to have build an agency around my vision. So the first thing I did is I started behaving like a leader. I was working for Saatchi & Saatchi at the time. I started dressing differently, which was weird because instead of coming to work in, the odd thing is when you become the leader, you can wear jeans and t-shirts to work every day and you can get away with it. But as a 27-year-old, I started wearing pants and button-up shirts and jackets to work. And of course, everyone at the office in the creative department gave me shit, and they're like, oh, job interview, And it kind of went, and it just went on for weeks and weeks, and then eventually people just tire of it and move on. So I kind of started trying to make myself look more like I was in charge. And the other thing I did is we had a bunch of juniors working in the agency, and I just started mentoring them. Nobody asked me to, but I just started hanging out in their office and offering my help. How are you guys going with that campaign? Do you want, here's some advice. So within a short amount of time, I'd somehow kind of made myself the king of the juniors, and they were all not reporting to me, but I was kind of looking after them, and people started asking me about how they could access the juniors, etc. So I sort of molded myself into the leader that I wanted to be and started practicing the skills that I knew I would need to ultimately lead an agency. And then eventually I ended up getting that job. But the counterpoint of that was something that happened probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was working with a guy who already had that title. He was the group creative director. And he came to me and he said, would you mind getting the team together, the account people and the creatives, and just like reminding them that I'm the group creative director and they should, respect me. Exactly. And, for me, it was a little bit of a shock that he was saying that. But what I said to him was, people will only treat you like the leader when you behave like the leader they want you to be. If you don't contribute in meetings, if you don't have a point of view, if you don't, start taking charge, then no one's going to treat you like you're in charge. The other thing is that, and I know that, I don't want to make it sound like what you wear makes all the difference, but he dressed like a slob. He would come in looking like an 18-year-old kid in a ripped-up old T-shirt. And I was like, you've got to start dressing like you're serious. So I talked to him a lot about having a point of view, making that point of view known, talking in meetings, taking ownership of presentations to clients, just being the leader. And he did. And then maybe 6 months later, he came and thanked me, and I didn't do anything. He did it all himself. But for me, there's a quote that has stuck with me for a lot of my professional life, which is summed up in those 2 stories, I think, which is from Colin Powell. And he said, when put in charge, take charge. And I always thought that was a really kind of profound statement of like, you're in charge, you are the boss, you don't have to ask anyone else's permission to be the boss, just be the boss, be the leader, and people will follow.
That's awesome. Pippa?
Well, I'm here to talk about how you find and identify great talent. It's one of the biggest challenges that creative directors have, especially in this economy where everybody's freelancing and you can make really good money doing it. How do you find people to come and stay in your agency? I got a call from a creative director a while back, and he said, I interviewed this copywriter, I really loved him, I loved the work, but it seems like I had seen this piece before, and I know I saw it in either the Clios or at the portfolio review that your school had. And he described the piece. And I said, well, actually, you saw it at the Clios and at the review. And I told him who had created the work and all. And he said, aha, I knew it. Because someone had gone to interview who was not the person who had done the work of the team and actually had it in their online and paper books. But the creative director asked a really good question. The most common question people get asked in an interview is, can you please walk me through one of your campaigns? And that's great because you can find out if the person understood the business problem and if they're good at selling their idea. But if you want to find out if they were really the one responsible for it, ask them, where did the idea come up with? How did it start? And let them take you through the cycle of that. Not only do you learn if they really did it, you also learn a lot about their creative process. Another really great question to ask is, what was your partner's contribution to the piece? If you ask that, you learn if they're a generous person and if they're collaborative. So those are my top 3 questions to ask candidates when you're interviewing. Besides the portfolio, the next thing you should look at is the personality. Because after all, we do spend more time with our work partners than we do our romantic partners. So we should kind of be in love with them. And 2 creative directors described what they look for, and I thought it was really great. One said, I look for people with an irrational amount of excitement toward things. Because you have to work on the same project for years and years and years, the same brand, and you have to reinvent it all the time. And another creative director said, I look for people who are puppy-like. And I thought that was a really creative way of saying the same thing, that, I'll do it. So.
Yeah,
cool.
And here's a plug for all advertising design schools. All of them have portfolio reviews. And it's a great way of finding entry-level talent, and you can interview 10 to 20 people in a day. We have them 6 times a year all over the country. And then often the schools we have something called Job Leads for Life. And so at our fingertips, we have 8,000 candidates at all different levels, from CMO to entry level. So please call Miami Ad School or any of the other top schools in your area, because we're a great source for you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Farrah?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about knowing the business of your company. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this, but I'll start by telling you a little bit about the journey to caring about this. So I started out in product, and now I'm back in product, but I've worked at agencies like Wyden and Chiat and Digitas. And one of the things that I think I thought in my first real job, I was about 21, 22, I remember calling my dad one day and saying, I don't understand how this company makes money. And part of it was we had just botched a shoot and we were going to have to eat it. The client wasn't going to pay for it, and it was not a cheap shoot. And so this sort of made me curious about, well, how do we make money? What do we charge our clients for? I read a couple of books on how to start and run an ad agency, which there actually are books like that. They're worth having a look at them. And then the more I sort of progressed, the more I started to realize that as you become more and more senior, you become more and more responsible for, yes, managing people, but also for managing the costs of the things that you do. Because if you can keep your costs within check, then your team makes a profit, and that contributes to the profitability of the larger company. And so there were a variety of moments where you sort of start to see the layers peel back on this information. And the more senior you get, the more this is revealed, until all of a sudden you are so senior that you are in charge of that problem. And so this is sort of a rude awakening for people who consider themselves to be very creative and just want to play with ideas and work with interesting people. But then you become responsible for the burn report on your particular project, or the campaign that you're responsible for. So I think there's a couple of reasons why it's important to know these things. One is it helps you understand what your personal goals are within the team. What are you responsible for as someone who is not just a cost center in the business? And I guess here's where I would step to one side, just to one side, and say, it is in my mind the height of bullshit that we think that strategy and creative are cost centers and not revenue generators in agencies. They absolutely are, because that's what you sell. So in that instance, you need to be thinking about what is it that you are bringing to the table? How much of the budget do you represent? And how much can you help to kind of drive the profitability of that particular project? Because that will position you both to be seen in the organization as someone who's thinking about the business and therefore poised to be a good manager and a good, eventually, executive creative director or a chief creative officer, as well as helping you demonstrate your value to the client, and that you are not there merely, not that that's not important, but merely, in the client's view, to win awards, but also to help drive the business in a productive sense. The other thing that's interesting about it is thinking about when you do bring in talent, what are they going to be responsible for? What's their slice of the budget or the pie that they're going to need to perform against? When I worked in market research companies, I was told at a certain level, basically we all needed to work on 4 times our salaries worth of business in a calendar year in order for the organization to be profitable. And so that was like just a nice, interesting benchmark number where I could sort of say, all right, it's April and I've worked on 4 times my salary's worth of business. Now I can go sailing. But the other side of it was to start to see, well, who's struggling and where can I jump in to help them? How do I bring in more business that can be diverted to other people so that we are all working on 4x our salaries? Later on, you discover where that 4x number comes from, and it's about 40 to 60%, depending on the nice level, how nice your building is, the building. So just the physical space you occupy is eating up about half of the revenue that the company brings in. So there's one thing that you're helping to pay for, is your really cool office and your nice ping pong table or whatever your amenity is. And all of those things help you to figure out how to staff and how to allocate resources, and just how to make decisions about who to hire. And then I think the last thing is that if you understand your own company's business model, you have empathy for 2 groups of people you might not think a lot about having empathy for. And one is your board or C-suite of your agency, who are telling you, no, you can't have 50 great creatives to work on ideas this week. And that's because there isn't budget for 50 great creatives ever in this project, but there also isn't at this stage of the project. So they're not doing it to make you mad. They're not doing it because they don't care about creative. They're doing it because they're trying to keep everybody's jobs. and also to try to keep the company growing. The second group of people that you need to have some empathy with, I think, in order to be a great sort of leader in agencies, is your client. If you understand your agency's business model, then you also understand a lot about how the client is viewing the money that they're giving to you. So, and you can also start to kind of project onto the way you understand any given assignment, what that assignment has to do with the client's ultimate business model. I think as a general matter, and I could go on at great length about this, knowing a lot about business models and how they work, how you get paid, how your client gets paid, how she gets bonused or incentivized or promoted, all of those things will just make you a lot better at what you do because you will take a wider view than just the project in front of you. So that's that.
Great.
That's awesome. What I want to do now is have you guys break into groups and talk about some of these things. Pick one of these things that you're good at, sort of check it off here on the back. We can walk around and listen to your conversations, but I'd prefer you not do it by yourself, that you would get together so that you can have the benefit of what each other knows and what you're thinking about. And then after that, you'll pick a few things based on what you're hearing from others of the kinds of things that you can do. Okay, so we'll give you about 10 minutes to talk among yourselves. So I think this was pretty cool. I think we've given you a different way to think about things. We're just gonna, I know you all want to keep talking to each other, which is completely awesome, and we love that, and you have a break now, so, but we're just gonna wind up for a few minutes. I'm gonna have my friends here talk a little bit about some of the things that they observed that you all were working on. It was like very heartening to me to hear all of you guys talking among each other about, gee, I never really thought about the money things before, the equivalencies, or I need, we spend all this money to do work over and over and over again, why didn't we do it right in the first place? And, a lot of these kinds of things. Why don't you talk about some of them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I have to give a shout out to this group over here I just spoke to who I said, have you worked out what you want to work on? They said, no, we're still talking about what we're good at. And I'm like, it's...
All right.
It's 35 minutes later. So that's nice to know they're good at a lot of things. But no, I think, for me, I talked about at the beginning of what I was saying of be a great leader. And I think what I really enjoyed hearing was there's a real deliberateness in the decisions that we're making now that you go, I recognize I need to be better at this and I'm going to get better at that. And that's the first sign of it. For me, I sat with groups that everything from, I need to get better at writing emails because I'm an art director and I've left that responsibility to my writer and I should take responsibility for that. So it's like, yeah, good. Because ultimately, if you want to be the leader, you have to be good at that. And then another group was just talking about the idea of kind of fake it till you make it. So behave like the person you want to be, and then eventually it becomes who you are.
Right.
So I think, if people really do kind of follow this and just take the one or two things and maybe go and read about it, find a book about it, and just put some stuff in your head.
Talk to me and the book will come.
Yes, exactly.
I was really excited by the power of everyone talking to each other, and I commend you, Katherine, for coming up with this idea and these worksheets that make it kind of easier to identify it and go in order. Each of the groups, almost everybody was good at a different skill and bad at a different one. And I saw everybody brainstorming and making suggestions on how that could be different. They were texting, making lists of notes to send to their boss about ideas of changing the things in the agency, like really easy things to implement. And it just made me think that maybe we should all create something like this, identify girlfriends at other companies, and become this group for each other.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah. A friend of mine, a zillion years ago, organized a group called Great Broads. And it was a group of 20 women she really looked up to, and they met periodically. They're having another meeting tomorrow night. But maybe we all need, I thought, I'm gonna do a Great Broads night, and Monica, you're gonna be one of my Great Broads in Miami, Maybe we all need to do that.
But I always say to people, find a mentor. Like, just find someone who can push you and ask you those questions and make you better, so.
I also heard people talking about things that Farrah had said, that other conferences about email writing, you were talking about making great comments there. So it was nice to see everybody applying what they had been learning here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
Farrah?
think there were a couple of really interesting things I heard going on. One was sort of talking about expanding beyond your existing network. So you know the 50 or 100, or maybe you're very good and you know 150 people. But then after a while, you've tapped those people out. So reaching beyond that and starting to kind of network the network and keeping track of people that you meet, taking advantages of things like the portfolio review for finding new talent. But then also acknowledging that, you know, the bigger the data set, the harder it is to sift and make sense of it. So being very pointed about the questions that you ask, being very strategic about those questions, I think was an interesting piece of advice that was shared in one of the conversations. And then I think the other thing is the sort of, you know, obviously there's the sit at the table, not against the wall, speak up. When you have an idea, offer it. When someone else, however, offers the same idea that you have, don't take that as a deterrent. That does not mean that they're always going to beat you to it. Just swing at the next pitch. That is, I think that's an important thing. Don't be deterred by the one time someone beat you to it. I think the other thing I might add to that is, this may be sacrilege in the room. Ideas are cheap. Executing is expensive and hard. And so it's one thing for somebody in the meeting to have a great idea, but if you're the person who actually makes that idea real, then that's a whole different layer of things. So I think those are some interesting conversations that were happening in some of the groups I listened in on.
I want to thank all of you for being such fantastic participants. If anybody has one or two last questions or anything you want to say or ask us or anything that you want to focus on or got out of it, we do actually have more time. We have 4 minutes. Might as well milk them all if anybody has anything to say.
Yes. Yay.
What's that? Okay, there we go. So one of the things that I've found happens is, especially as a creative is getting promoted and kind of building their experience, they get to a certain point, like an associate creative director, for example. And I find that oftentimes there are two camps that sort of emerge. There are the creatives who want to stay very close to their craft and not take on a lot of these leadership experiences. And then the others that want to kind of go along the path that we've been talking about today. So in the instance where someone wants to stay very close to their craft, but they still expect to be able to become an ECD, for example, how do you deal with that kind of conundrum and a little bit of the disconnect around expectation?
Well, that really, I'll say one thing, everybody can jump in, but I think you can't become an ECD if you just always want to be an art director and you always just want to be a copywriter, because to be an ECD, you necessarily have to know more about the client's business. You necessarily have to know more about money making and hiring people and all those kinds of things. So you have to, it's very hard.
It's a different job. Yeah.
It's a different job, and it's very hard for all of us to say, you know what, I'm not going to write every single thing anymore. Yeah, I'm going to give it to other people.
I mean, I think it is a challenge because, definitely the money comes as an ECD, and that, there are a lot of things that come with that. But if you don't want that responsibility, then I think you have to mentally go, you know what, I also don't deserve that money. Like, I'm not going to get that extra money that comes with it, or the extra responsibility, the extra power. For me, one of my mentors said to me something many years ago, which has kind of defines, I think, what I saw my role as and what I enjoy doing. And he said that your job's not to create great advertising, your job is to cause it. And that's, to me, what I love doing. And I know there are people who are better copywriters than I am, but I can get better work out of them because I know how to cause great advertising.
Right. Well, that's sort of the Bill Bernbach philosophy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's an interesting point about staying close to the craft by cultivating it in others. That said, I think the other thing that I think is a trap in conversations, especially amongst ambitious, high-achieving women, is the have-it-all thing. The people at the top don't have it all, and they also don't do it all. So I think there is room, depending on the size of your agency and the kind of shape of it, to have people who are stronger on the client side and stronger on the talent cultivation side, on the creating the great work versus the really getting close with the client. You don't have to do everything, but you do have to be strategic about what up looks like to you as you move up the chain. Because I think you're right. You are going to have to take responsibilities that aren't in your comfort zone, but you can be a little bit choiceful about which ones those are.
It's funny you say that. My mother was a creative director, and she used to say to me, "You can have it all, but not all at the same time."
Yeah, exactly. I think there was another question over there somewhere.
I actually had a question. Piggybacking off of that a little bit, what I've seen happen a lot of times is that people you do great work and you get promoted and then you become an ACD and a CD. However, you can be a great creative but not a great manager. What do you think agencies can do to help better train people going from that senior level to management level position?
I mean, I think we do nothing for them right now. And there's a few of my J. Walter Thompson colleagues here. So we've just introduced a program called Future Leaders, which is completely aimed at creatives who want to be a creative director or executive creative director, because I think in our industry, we push people into promotions and higher jobs, and we don't talk about any of the stuff that we're talking about today. We don't talk about how does the company make money? How does my client make money? What are the traits of a great leader? So I think, for me, I just created a training program within our own company to absolutely focus on that. And I think there should be more of it in the industry. If anyone has huge desires to be a leader in the creative industry, I'm a huge fan of the Berlin School of Creative Leadership. It's expensive, but it's amazing, and it will change your life.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of changing your life, we want to thank you all for being here today. That's all the time we have, unfortunately, and that's it. So thank you very much.